Yes, it's been confirmed, Stranger Things is coming back to Dead by Daylight. Now, if you're one of those people on the internet that were hoarding and selling old DLC codes for hundreds and hundreds of dollars, this is not a very good day for you, oops. But for everyone else in the community, this is amazing news. And if you're one of those folks that is considering picking up this chapter, in this video we're going to highlight everything in it, what makes it so special, so that you can decide whether or not you want to buy it. This is one of the few chapters with 3 characters, so let's break them down. The first survivor is Nancy. She has a relatively small frame and some dark clothes, which makes her quite stealthy, and she's not one of the particularly loud characters, which is great. Her perks are also quite useful for beginners. She has Better Together, which makes any generators that you work on highlighted in yellow for your teammates to find, and also gives you a little bit of information on what your team is doing whenever somebody goes down. Fixated, which shows you your own scratch marks, which are normally only visible to the killer, and also makes your walking speed a little bit higher, which has some benefits for both beginners and advanced players. And her final perk is Inner Strength, a really convenient healing perk. After you cleanse any totem, you can go into a locker, and after a few seconds, you'll come out with full health. Our second survivor in this chapter is Steve. He is less stealthy and quite loud overall, unless you play him with the Jonathan Byers skin, which actually makes him rather quiet. His perks are a bit harder for beginners to use, but can occasionally be alright. Second Wind activates when you heal someone else, and then heals you passively when you become unhooked. It is quite good. Babysitter triggers when you unhook someone else. It shows you the aura of the killer and makes that person a little bit harder to find and catch. Not a strong effect, but not too bad either. And then there's Camaraderie, which allows you to stay on the hook for a little bit longer before the entity consumes you. It's quite situational, and not every team is coordinated enough to use it well, but every now and then it can come in clutch. And then, of course, we have the killer of this chapter, the Demogorgon. He's a very well-rounded and balanced killer with the typical stats. He has a very respectable skill ceiling, which is great for experienced players, but he's also not too difficult for a beginner to pick up, and his perks are great for new players. Search is one of the most simple and useful perks in the game. Anytime you down someone with a basic attack, any gens near you will take damage and begin to regress. Then there's Mindbreaker, which is also really simple. It makes any survivor repairing a gen blind and exhausted, which can rob them of a lot of information and initiative. And his final perk is Cruel Limits, which blocks all the windows in the map when a generator is completed. It sounds really powerful, but it's not the most reliable perk. As for the demo's power, there are 2 parts to it. The first one is the Shred, which is a very fast dash attack that can be used to break stuff or damage survivors. This attack needs to be charged briefly. If you charge it the minimum amount, you won't go as far, but if you charge it fully for a second, you'll actually go a bit further. This is a very easy to use power, but as a beginner, you don't need to use it every single time. If a pallet is dropped early, you can shred it right away and get rid of it, but use your brain. You don't need to break every pallet. Some of them you can just play around. And don't just sit there like a dummy expecting every survivor to just drop every pallet immediately. Most of them will play around it first. For survivors that are completely in the open, you don't need to risk using your power. You can just fake it, and they'll probably panic and lose distance, and then you can just go for a normal hit. And when they start playing around windows, be patient. Most of them will try to fake the window and make you miss. Don't fall for this bait. Wait until you see the vault animation start, or until you see their item disappear, and then you know you can hit them for sure. Some loops have straight edges where using your shred is very easy, or tight spots where dodging it is almost impossible, and some others have very round edges where survivors can just lose you around each corner, and here you'll need to be a bit more restrained. With experience, you'll identify where and when you should use your shred, so don't worry too much about it. The other part of the Demogorgon's power are his portals. The Demogorgon can place portals around the map for him to teleport to later. Before you use them, these portals are inactive. They are invisible to survivors and cannot be interacted with, but after you use them, they become active and glow with a yellow color. At this point, survivors can see them and disable them. Notice that if you hold your power button, you'll detect survivors that are near your active portals. When it comes to using them, you can keep things simple. At the start of the match and later throughout the game, try to keep 1 portal on each half of the map. If at any point you need to return to that area, you can place a portal at your feet and then teleport right there. You can also place portals very close to gens to keep an eye on them, or a bit further so that you can use the few seconds of stealth that you get when you come out of one. Placing portals on second floors and elevated areas is also a great idea. It gives you a good view of the area, and you can even use your shred to launch yourself to close the gap with a survivor. If there's one area that you really want to protect, you can also place 2 portals and only keep one of them active. That way, if they destroy one, you'll always have a backup one to return to. When it comes to builds, we have videos covering some of his best perks and add-ons, but you can start with a simple one like this, or maybe this if you already have some teachables unlocked. The underground complex, aka the Hawkins map, is also making a return. Much like other indoor maps, it's very easy to get lost in here, everywhere looks more or less the same, so hopefully this little layout will help you orient yourself. Notice that this map has a shape of a vertical rectangle. On the left and right we have both exit gates. They're not always on the same spot, but they always spawn on this wall somewhere along, opposite from one another. If we look at the bottom, we have a big glass room. This one has a very strong window that always spawns here, and also has a guaranteed generator above that is very safe to do until the killer gets very close. If we look to the top, you'll notice that there's 2 different sets of staircases, and both of them take you to the same place. The top floor that has very little safety, you don't want to be chased here, but also one generator that is very isolated from the rest of the map. As long as you're not too afraid to work here, or not too vulnerable to some ambush from a stealth killer, you want to do this gen at some point, and don't forget that right next to it there is a big drop that will take you back to the bottom floor. On the bottom floor itself, we have different rooms, a small set of rooms here, and some larger ones that are somewhat interchangeable. What you find in each of these rooms is somewhat randomized, but with time you'll start to identify the types of loops and how to play them. Besides those 2 guaranteed generators that we mentioned, the rest will be spread out across the map. Some of them might spawn on the catwalks, so keep an eye out for those, they're easy to miss. And the other ones will often be along the corridors and hallways. You'll notice that next to gens that need to be done, the lights at the ceiling are actually turned off. This might help you find them a bit. And if you are a veteran and already know the map and have already played with all of these characters for years, be kind to all of the new people that are trying them for the first time. Have a lovely day, and see you in the next one.